Movie summary, The Killer, 2023. Somewhere in Paris, France, a professional murderer, known as the Killer, stakes out in an unfinished space. In his space, there are construction materials such as paints and cements. There are also construction equipments. Chapter 1, Paris, the Target. The Killer sits upright in a straight-backed folding chair, positioned near the window to gaze outside. After a while, the Killer rises and stretches his arms and shoulders. He tilts his head from side to side to relieve tension in his neck. The Killer, who is wearing latex gloves, drinks some water. He returns to his seat, places an ear pod in his right ear, and listens to music. The Killer, still wearing gloves, practices yoga on a clear patch of floor. The Killer performs a series of push-ups. He goes down through the stairs. Hodges calls to inform him that the target is in town. The Killer then returns to his space. Using his rifle scope, he looks around outside. The Killer assembles his sniper rifle while waiting for the target. The target arrives with a dark-haired woman. The Killer needs a pulse rate under 60 and a measured squeeze, so vintage glass won't alter trajectory. The Killer swings his sniper rifle, waiting for the right and perfect time. The Killer's finger pulls the trigger, firing. The Killer misses, hitting the dark-haired woman who crossed the line of fire. The Killer hurriedly disassembles his sniper rifle. The Killer escapes through the stairs. Riding in his Vespa, the Killer runs away into the empty night. The Killer goes into a bathroom of a gasoline station, cleans himself and changes his clothes. He then flies to the Miami, United States under fake identity Felix Unger. The Killer flies to the Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic under fake identity Archibald Bunker. Chapter 2, Dominican Republic, The Hideout. The Killer enters his house. He finds knives scattered on a bloody floor. The Killer goes to the hospital. He finds her girlfriend, Magdala, lying on a bed, sleeping. Marcus, Magdala's brother, tells that they are monitoring her for internal bleeding. Marcus says that Magdala was interrogated and tortured by two assassins, one of which was a woman but managed to injure one of them. Magdala escapes and hid in a jungle. The Killer, pointing his gun at a taxi dispatcher, enters a taxi company office. The Killer checks a computer and finds that the name of the driver that drove the assassins to the Killer's home is Leo Rodriguez. The Killer rides on the taxi of Leo Rodriguez. Leo describes his passengers as two crazy-looking güero. One lady, she is like Q-Tip. But the guy with her should have kept him on a chain, he was a scary one. The Killer shoots the driver Leo Rodriguez, then leaves Leo's taxi stealing his boombox. The Killer flies to the United States under the fake identity Howard Cunningham. Chapter 3, New Orleans, The Lawyer. The Killer parks his rental van in a storage unit. The Killer takes a Glock handgun and cash from a document safe. The Killer enters Edward Hodges' outer office disguised as a maintenance worker and finds Dolores, Hodges' secretary. The Killer, pointing a gun at Dolores, enters Hodges' inner office. The Killer instructs Dolores to zip-tie his boss both wrists on his wheel desk chair. The Killer instructs Dolores to zip-tie herself to a bathroom sink. The Killer asks Hodges, who were they? Hodges answers, who cares? I barely glanced at the invoice. The Killer nailed Dolores' laptop and Hodges' laptop on Hodges' table using a nail gun to destroy the records of their work. Hodges advises the Killer to turn around, walk out of the door, and embrace his next life. The Killer fires 3 nails on Hodges' chest. The Killer watches Hodges until his last breath. Dolores tells the Killer that she has the names the Killer is looking for and she knows who they were. The Killer cuts Dolores' zip ties. Dolores sees Hodges' dead body, then she faints to the ground. The Killer then puts Hodges' dead body on the gray bin. Dolores and the Killer with the gray bin ride on an elevator. They go to Dolores' house. On Dolores' house, the killer gets the information he is looking for. As they near the stairwell, the killer twists Dolores' head, brutally sending Dolores down the floor through the stairs, killing Dolores. The killer disposes Hodge's dead body. Chapter 4, Florida, the Brute. With his gun, the killer enters the house of the Brute. While searching for the Brute attacks him from the back. They then engage in a fight. After a long brutal fight, the killer shoots the Brute on the head, killing him. Diva, the Brute's mastiff dog, chases the killer, but he manages to escape. The killer then sets the house of the Brute on fire with a Molotov cocktail. The killer flies to New York to hunt the expert. Chapter 5, New York, the Expert. The killer finds the expert and follows her car. The expert's car stops, and she enters a restaurant. The killer follows her and seats in her table while showing his gun. The expert invites the killer to join for her last supper. A waiter comes to deliver a wooden plank with small glasses of whiskey, each labeled, lined up on it. The expert takes up the first glass of whiskey. The expert tells the killer that she never would have involved his female friend. She objected on Brute's method. The expert picks up the second glass of the flight. The expert picks up the third shot. After some storytelling, the expert lifts the last shot. The killer takes the shot in front of him and drinks. The killer and the expert leave the restaurant. The two walk. The expert appears to slip down a small flight of ice-covered stairs. The killer shoots her on the head, saying trust no one. The killer notices a concealed knife on the expert's hand. The killer is on a plane. He is going to Chicago to hunt down Henderson Claiborne, the client. Chapter 6, Chicago, the Client. The killer observes Henderson Claiborne exits a building going to his car. The killer goes to a bank. He closes his account in the name of George Jefferson. All are transferred to his Caribbean account. The killer then buys a gun. Inside a gym, the killer steals the orange keycard, pulling it away on a janitor's zipcord. The killer unlocks Claiborne's locker. He grabs Claiborne's keychain with keycard attached. He then closes the locker. The killer sees Claiborne running on a treadmill. The killer then leaves the gym. The killer enters Claiborne's penthouse vicinity. The killer rides an elevator and stops at 27th floor. The killer enters Claiborne's penthouse. The killer finds Claiborne holding 2 bottles of whiskey. Claiborne asks the killer who he is because his memory for names and faces isn't what it used to be. The killer shows him a card with unanticipated overage written on it, and with an address of Paris, France, etc. Claiborne explains that he has no issue with the killer, zero, as far as he is concerned, they are good. The killer tells Claiborne that if there is a next time, there may be a slow death. Then the killer leaves. The killer goes back to Dominican Republic. Back at home, the killer fills a cup with caramel-colored coffee. Then balances the lemon peel sliver on the cup's lip so it rests partially on the coffee's surface. The killer places this perfect espresso romano on a serving tray. The killer carries the tray to his girlfriend, Magdala. The killer and Magdala sit facing the ocean.